Welcome out to It's All Been Trucked Before. This time we're going behind the scenes of Deep Space Nine. Yeah, special episode. Behind the scenes, Deep Space Nine. Get in front of the scenes, behind the scenes. It's coming up October 14th. It's the 100th show of the Mothership. It's All Been Done Radio Hour. 100th straight. And it's a big deal. It's a big show. It's going to be a great show. And there's a party afterwards. Now, there's always a party afterwards. Big deal here. You're part of it. Get your ticket. Be part of the party. Boxam Media. Go to boxammedia.com. Get those tickets. It's going to be something special. Hey, it's October. It's Halloween. Dress up as your favorite IBD character. Hey, stretch it out. Go as your favorite It's All Been Trucked Before character if you want. Speaking of which, we're going behind the scenes here. I'm giving you a peek behind the curtain. You're going behind the scenes of another curtain. It's the Deep Space Nine curtain. On this behind the scenes of Deep Space Nine episode of It's All Been Trucked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And the high-definition Keith.
And Jimmy Jerome. We are going behind the scenes on Deep Space Nine. We haven't taken our season hiatus yet. This is still technically part of the season, barely. We start our hiatus next week. But we decided to pull out the VHS Deep Space Nine behind the scenes and give it a watch. What were your first impressions?
Well, a couple things that would probably fit there, but it just, I was surprised at how much backstory, or, the intro they were giving. It seemed like over half. Maybe, I wasn't really timing it, but it seemed like so much it was taken up by, here's what DS9 is.
Each of the characters, and
I wondered, sort of what the audience was.
That is one of my notes, is who is the audience for this?
And it's funny, I think if we had actually had, and we almost did, I guess, maybe like an impulsive offer, hey, you want to go to do this thing? But whatever. If somebody hadn't watched the show at all, and they're watching, that might be pretty helpful, but...
Right. Yeah. But what would make them purchase it?
Yeah. Or rent, who knows?
Right, that's
Yeah, I mean, this was created by Paramount Television through Entertainment Tonight to air part of that. It was part of the same production.
That makes sense.
So, yeah, they were primarily looking at the production of the pilot, which I think you could tell.
Yeah.
Because all the actor interviews were in pilot costume and makeup and hair, and some of them were definitely not finalized makeup and stuff.
Yeah.
Odo and Quark in particular. Close to final, but not final. But yeah.
Did you happen to know like what the latest episode they included was?
I saw Duet, which was the next to last episode of the season, right?
All right, so
I did not see Eclipse from In the Hands of the Prophets, which was the season finale. They released this in November of '93, so DS9 premiered in January '93. They released this in the UK in November '93. So season 2 would have already premiered.
Okay.
But they did not include anything from season 2 in this. So I think it was more like, hey, season 1 didn't get as many viewers as we want.
Okay.
This is our show. Join us now, because you can't go back and binge season 1.
Right.
So let's catch you up.
That's a good point. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So let's tell you who the characters are.
Yeah.
What I found interesting is we go through each character by character, but you notice the one lead that was notably absent and did not have much said about him.
Sisko.
Yeah. Isn't that weird to not include the captain?
That is weird.
Do we even see any clips of him? It's barely.
Barely.
Not much.
I'm trying to.
Yeah. Huh.
What?
That is weird.
Like maybe not even at all.
He's not listed on the IMDb.
Like included, like even in the.
Oh, and at the end when they listed him, he wasn't on there either. They listed everybody in the character.
You think it's some sort of release thing, or
maybe
they speak? It's too obvious for.
I don't know. I'm on Memory Alpha, and there's nothing that's.
You have the sun and don't even mention.
Right.
Because IMDb does not have any trivia or anything about it. When I Google why was he not in it, I don't see anything.
Huh.
I know he doesn't do conventions. He's like notably.
Oh wow.
Okay,
he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't typically do a lot of. I'm pretty sure the DS9 documentary that came out a couple of years ago, he also was like took a pass on it.
Huh.
All right, so this is probably related to that. I would have to think that it's
something.
That it was his choice, but you'd think that would be in his contract that as the captain, you have to do a certain amount of publicity.
It could have been some sort of contract dispute. It could have been. I don't want to even like put forth the theory that we don't want to make it look too black or something for this other audience we're trying to pitch this to or something.
It could have been because they killed him off in the season 2 premiere, so they didn't want to. So they didn't want to plug the captain that wasn't on the show anymore.
It could be.
I'm obviously kidding, Steven.
No.
Obviously, we actually didn't do first impressions past Keith.
Oh yeah, I thought it was. And my first note was, cheese. It was so cheesy, and I know they still do things like this, but you know, her first greeting was very, as I mentioned, was very like, "Oh, hello, I didn't see you there," kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And part of me just finds that so cheesy and annoying, but the other part of me finds it endearing at this point.
Right.
Like, and maybe, and probably very much for nostalgic reasons. Like, man, there was a time where this is how they did this stuff. And and long before this, but you know, now we're also ironic and irreverent and postmodern. We can't even do this kind of cheese. Although I'm sure it happens. I mean,
we still do it, but like knowingly doing it is
right.
Just waking it up.
So that said, I thought even with those conventions, and you mentioned Entertainment Tonight, I was like, oh yeah, the production, the look to this whole thing, and that makes sense, and they're Paramount or whatever. But once they got into like some real actual behind the scenes stuff, I thought some of it was pretty cool. But it was like, hey, in the last 10 minutes they finally got to that. I was like, oh, okay, well, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of fluff. It was very much a promotional piece. And had we not seen it, had we just been a little bit interested, I think it would have got us excited and wanted.
Right.
We mentioned at one point, like, some of the clips they took out of context
really
landed
good.
a lot better than they did in the episode.
Absolutely.
In context, which was really funny.
Yeah.
I did think the one clip they cut too early where Bashir's talking about wanting to be out, being a frontier doctor, and they cut it before Kira smacked him down, and I think they should have left the smackdown. Because it almost seemed like they did not want to portray DS9 as humorous, which it's not overly humorous, but I feel like Star Trek always rejects its humorous side, and it's like, why?
Yeah.
I mean, even talking about Quark and stuff, they didn't get into the humor.
Yeah.
But my first impression, I guess I should say, is, it was a thing. It felt like fluff that they would make at the time.
Yes.
It was not something for us fans that delve into it, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Although probably a lot of people that bought it were fans. So it's just like, well, I got to have everything Star Trek. So
sure.
I got to get, maybe there'll be something so cool behind the scenes. And like I said, there were a couple cool things, but I wish there'd been more of those.
Near the end. And none of us had seen this before today, so this was brand new to everybody.
There was no blooper reel. I was hoping for a blooper reel.
No, too early.
That's what brought,
or lean out of the humor.
That was how, TOS became, kind of its comeback in syndication was the blooper reels at the conventions. That was kind of the thing. That's how Ben Stiller, his mom was one of the early people, Ann Mira, and he would go with her and she'd show the blooper reel and all that stuff. So anyway, I was kind of disappointed in that, but I thought that's where they were going, but they didn't.
You mentioned the opening where they basically showed a runabout lifting off, and then they did a montage of scenes, and then the runabout landed back on Deep Space Nine, and Terry Farrell's like, I hope your journey was pleasant. And you're like, but we left the station and came back to the station. What was our journey exactly?
Maybe the idea is we were leaving from a different station.
I mean, from another Cardassian station, the Federation station.
Deep Space
DS10.
We were going the same place.
Probably 8.
I mean, I'm sure there are other I would be really surprised if Deep Space 8 or Deep Space 10 were Cardassian designed, because Starfleet, most of the Deep Space, I would imagine, are Starfleet designed.
Now, they kept saying it was at the edge of the universe. Did they mean the edge of the galaxy?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, did they say universe?
Did they say universe?
Yeah.
It's not even the edge of the galaxy. Yeah. It's the edge of Federation territory.
That's more. Yeah.
That's funny.
Because it's not near like the border of the galaxy or
right.
anything.
Yeah.
Like Douglas Adams' place.
I will say, as much as she played along with it, Terry Farrell, cutting the cheese with Terry Farrell is effective. Well, effective for me because she's a pretty woman, and she's obviously got some charm that way, and I like her voice. And her voice was a little different than Jadzia Dax's.
Right. I've got a couple notes about that, actually.
Yeah.
One of the earlier ones is and it's weird when you say things like this, but it's almost like she was too engaging, and it just went like almost like seductive. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but just for the market of things, this is just like that kind of one of those picky production kind of like, oh, if you're gonna be doing voice acting over this thing, you kind of like present like
right.
Maybe that was the point. I don't know. Was she given free rein to just kind of like?
This is why we need more.
I doubt it.
This is why we need more women guests on the shows to see if they would feel the same way as we felt, as if they felt she was being seductive, or if it would just it just felt that way to us because she's pretty.
I wonder if this was her consolation prize for getting hardly anything to do in season 1. They're like, here, we didn't give you anything to do. Here's something to do. Makes you more front and center.
That was relates to one of my theories as well, but it does feel like she's really just having a good time, which is, again, that's good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
She did a great job as host.
Yeah.
based on some of the types of comments I've gotten from women that I know, another weird thing to say, obviously to frame it that way, but
Women in your binders. The women
yes.
you know in your binders.
Do you have any female friends, Keith?
well, does my ex-wife count? That's one of the people I was thinking of. Actually. No, seriously.
Former guests of the show.
When we watch things like this, I mean, that is 100% one of the comments you would probably make. Like, why is she doing
Yeah.
that? But
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it was direction that was given to her, but also,
really,
I felt like she could easily be an Entertainment Tonight host after
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, she's better than that.
Yes.
Not to say that that's not a job that takes talent and skill, because it does. And it's a different type of skill than acting.
yes.
She's a really good actress when they actually give her stuff
Yeah.
to do. So that's what I meant by she's better than that. That probably came out wrong because there are plenty of television hosts that are very good at what they do. And
Yeah, better in the sense that you shouldn't boil it down to this being that.
Right.
She's a broader skill set than just.
yes,
Yes.
kind of like it reminded my immediate mind went to immediately Jamila Jamil. What's her
Oh,
name?
Jamila
Jamila Jamil, who was like a Entertainment Tonight type host before she broke into like the Good
I
Place and
didn't know
stuff,
that.
like over in Britain.
Okay. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. I did know that.
So
I took that back.
they mentioned at the beginning of this documentary, they said the Kardashians were a cross between World War II Nazis and something else, and Keith really took offense at the Nazi comparison. I mean, I brought it up in earlier
Keith
episodes.
also has Kardashian friends.
Oh, okay. He's
Russian,
1/16th Kardashian.
something about Russian Cossacks or something like that. What did he say exactly?
Yeah.
Something about.
Once he said Nazis, your reaction distracted me. I didn't hear the second part. He was comparing them to
Yeah, Russian something. It was. Right.
Ukrainian invaders.
It was something. I think I noted it later, just to a little bit more jokingly. It was the same guy, right?
Zimmerman? Herman Zimmerman?
Yeah.
There was just something very cynical about the way he was presenting these things. I put down he was sort of like giving away the farm, hitting right on the nose. The sorts of things we would go. It seems like they're kind of doing this, or it seems like they're adapting Western here, or he's just like straight out, just like we just did this, and it's like a Western thing for the saloon. And, we're doing like that. Here's this formula. We're just this is just like a direct combination of. Like, literally, these things. So.
Well, how many production designers did interviews back then? Was that a skill set that he developed, or was this like...
I know we get to see some of that, too, which is kind of fun. The idea when you're interviewing people who aren't supposed to be doing interviews professionally, necessarily.
Yeah. I'd say the polar opposite of that's like Mike Okuda, the graphic design guy, who... Maybe he's not used to interviewing, but man, his like passion really came out, and his intellect came out. Mike Okuda was... such a driving force through all the 90s and aughts Star Trek, and they actually brought him back for this season of Star Trek Picard, but he's the one that created like all the Okudograms, that's what they call them, the like graphics on the screens and things.
Yeah.
And that was his wife Denise right in front of him that they did not mention in the clip, sketching on the thing. But he and Mike Okuda and Denise Okuda also did the Star Trek Encyclopedia. They did that in their spare time, put all that together. Yeah, so you could really tell his fanboy working for the show, but also like super talented and knowledgeable and just personable. And that was, I think, to Keith's point of Herman Zimmerman not being great on camera, I think Mike Okuda was the type of person you want to put on camera.
Well, it's not. I don't want to be like, oh, he's not telegenic or anything. It was just the way that he chose to present the things seemed kind of taking away the magic of something. You know what I'm saying? Just
I have a note on that too, as far as the content creators. Some of them were like, it's like, oh, I didn't. Almost similar to what we joked about at the beginning. Like, did you guys not know you were filming today? Shows up in a baseball cap.
Michael Pillar. I think he just always wore a baseball cap.
He probably did, and then that shirt that was very 90s. I was like, I had a couple of those shirts.
Yeah.
But
they might not have known.
They're wearing kind of the whatever, clothes, JCPenney, Gur Animals or whatever. But yet they're talking about this amazing, imaginative things that these guys created. But you look at it, and this is just, I guess this is the fashion part of the episode. But I was just, and I should not be one to judge because I was dressing worse than that. I maybe just like that in the 90s.
I still am, I guess.
So, I haven't. Yeah, me too.
The impression I took away from that, both Michael Pillar and Rick Berman, was they basically pulled him aside and said, hey, you're going to do some interviews. Here's 2 shirts we bought for you to wear that will make you look casual and yet still kind of professional, but we don't want you in suits, so take your suits off and put this on. And Pillar's like, fine, I'm going to keep my baseball cap. They're like, whatever, we're not going to fight you. You're the boss. They did not yet have Ira Stephen Bear of the blue beard, the blue goatee.
Right.
He was a little further behind the scenes at this point.
I think I have a better way to word what I was thinking before. About for them, this is just like another project. It seems like, or for Zimmerman, it's sort of like this is just another one that he's not going to have the same sort of reverence that we would have for it, like 20-something years later to see it. It's just. This is just a show.
I'm still working on this. Yeah. I'm still on this job on this one.
Yeah. Season 1 of something that's here's a way to slap it together.
This is the 22nd show I've worked on in my career, and it's just
I don't know if there's going to be a 3rd season or anything yet.
Yeah. So the Armin Shimmerman, some of these interview notes I took. Armin Shimmerman talking about Quark, and he's like, yeah, I'm a capitalist, like a Rockefeller or a Carnegie. I just take advantage of people and steal all their money. I'm like, yes, that is a great example of how 30 years ago we knew capitalism was evil. And we just keep plugging away. We've elevated the Quarks of our society since then. We even let one be president. That wasn't fair to Quark. Quark is way more compassionate than that man was.
The way that he hit capitalist was just, it was so funny. Just like,
you could tell he's an anti-capitalist.
Yeah, it didn't even register to me how forward-thinking that would have been at that time. Because of how common we bash it now. It's like, oh, it's so obvious. Why would anybody...
Yeah. I think Armin Shimmerman's been a bleeding heart liberal for a long time.
But my note about it is that just having him in makeup, which makes more sense when he showed us the process later,
right?
And just the way that he was sort of in character and sort of not, he was just right out of the gate perfect. Like, I would have... enjoyed watching him host the entire thing. He was like pitch perfect for the journey through it.
Yeah.
Which again, not taking away from Terry Farrell, as I'm sure that they were doing it.
Sure.
They wanted to do a certain thing a certain way, but I thought that he had just like the right level of tongue in cheek. And getting back to her too. I remember when she was. I noted that when she was starting to talk about the trill, she shifted into her Dax voice. It was just a nice, serious kind of like.
Yeah.
But some of those things are you can tell that some of the things were more scripted than others, it seemed like.
And then your counterpoint is Rene Auberjonois, who seemed to be going out of his way to not sound like Odo.
Yeah.
Even though the Odo voice is the same voice he uses in his other roles. That's his normal voice.
Right.
So what he was doing here was not his normal voice.
Really?
He was I guess I've never had a conversation with him in real life, but if you watch him on Boston Legal or MASH or anything, he sounds like Odo. He doesn't sound like that.
No, I was noting that I hadn't ever seen him in this sort of like, here I am, just doing an interview, because it was just nothing like any of the other voices. They're all just, he sounds so much older in everything he's doing, and it was just sort of like a nice flat thing. But then the clip they showed,
his woo-hoo, it was just so goofy.
I enjoyed it.
It was the clip they showed where he was explaining, where Odo was explaining the significance of not knowing where he came from and so forth, and that clue actually sounded very close to Rene Auberjonois' just normal speaking voice in the interview. So I was like, it was like a moment of vulnerability, kind of thinning the. So that's why I was like, he's doing that.
Yeah, I just thought it was very odd
when they were going through like, and this is another part I actually like was the makeup stuff, which I know we see in every sci-fi behind the scenes, but it makes sense. Quark's makeup and Odo's, and then I was really hoping they'd get to Kira and she'd be like, I show up about 10 minutes, and they just put it on and I go on.
No, it sounds like she comes in early too.
Yeah, I'm sure she does, but I was just like, it's just those ridges, that's it.
It can't be as much as Quark though. I mean,
right.
That looks just intense.
And Odo and Morn and
I'd like to see the difference there. You noted that Morn was just like an entire headpiece they were putting over his head,
and then they did around the eyes.
Looks like you would have to do something like that.
I guess
Quark.
I've done where I've had to sit a half an hour maybe get makeup done for a couple shows where I was a mouse, a lab rat, and stuff like that. But I guess I did this. I would just ran lines because I was thinking, man, if I got up at 4:00 and came in and was just sitting there and they're doing this thing they do every day, I imagine he either napped or ran lines or whatever and
watched TV, read a book. Yeah, they do all those.
Yeah, because I guess it's not like his face has to be straightforward the whole time. But
Right. Yeah. Well, what you mentioned about the Ferengi is a lot of the Ferengis did just have one piece, but because it was a lead character, he had the more elaborate.
Yeah.
And I think I want to say Nog and Rom's makeup started more simple at the beginning, and then they got the more elaborate treatment as time went on because they became more important characters. So they spent a little more time and budget.
The significance, I think, would be so he could be more expressive. He would have to do a lot of close-ups for the dialogue and getting those sneers or whatever else.
Well, and when a lot of the alien stuff, when they're just a guest star, they've got Klingon headpieces and Ferengi headpieces and stuff that they use over and over again on different actors. Mm-hmm. Whereas Armin Shimmerman's is molded specifically for him.
I see.
Because, he's a lead. Speaking of makeup, it was interesting to see the early test of Jadzia Dax in the actual Trill makeup from The Next Generation. Yeah. It's still so bizarre to me that they chose to ignore what they did with the Trill and use Famke Janssen's totally different species makeup. Right. It was the right choice, but that brief clip of Dax with the forehead ridges, it was like interesting. Now, I do know her spots were all hand-painted on every day.
Oh, wow.
They had, pictures on the wall of exactly how each spot looked, and they hand-painted and copied them every single day.
What?
I guess what I wanted...
And then there are episodes where you see further down, and those took longer, obviously, than just to the neck.
It would have been cool to see how long it took them to get it off, all that off.
I think hers would be relatively quick.
Easy,
but yeah.
You would think they would have like a stencil or something. You kind of put it on a crown and then stencil down. And
I think they would nowadays, but back then, I remember them talking about it. I read interviews and they showed each spot was numbered on the chart, and it was usually the head makeup artist that did it. But if he wasn't available, they had very detailed diagrams for them to copy.
That doesn't make any sense.
It's just back then. That's what they did in the 90s. Keith, the 90s were a crazy time.
I mean, I'm sorry. It just. Based upon what we were seeing them do with other things, it doesn't seem like it would be the most. I don't know. I feel like they would have been capable of doing something to streamline that.
I don't know. Maybe the makeup artist just wanted to paint on her every day. I don't know.
Perhaps. Ooh.
I don't really think that's the reason it was done, for the record. Yeah, they were hand-drawn by Michael Westmore, and he deliberately used a technique that made his hand quiver while he did it to give it part of its unique look.
Oh, interesting. Like I said, I thought once they got into behind-the-scenes stuff, I liked when they were, showing, behind the camera a scene, and then they showed the actual scene right after it.
Yeah.
I thought those were really cool. And then the sound versus no sound scene, which I know we've seen that kind of stuff in the past. I feel like they do it at the Oscars every 3 or 4 years. Here's how important sound is, that kind of stuff. But that said, I thought that part was pretty cool too.
That's I don't think I actually wrote it in, but that scene kind of hit me a little differently this time too. I kind of liked it. Once you've done more of these kinds of things, especially IABD, and just when you're just standing in front of a mic and trying to do that kind of we're stumbling now, or or if you ever go to conventions and workshops, which that's how I got started trying to do voice acting. They explain, or they give you a little test to try to do, let's go up to the mic and just try to, you're out of breath, you're doing blah blah blah, and just seeing them having to sit there almost cold and do I'm reacting into this, and just the perfect way that she was I've taken a bump at this exact moment, and to the, so that's just it looked very challenging, is what I was going to say, to muster that kind of urgency and keep that going across the board, and then just because even when we were doing the radio hour thing, it helps a lot when the sound effects are lining up live as you're doing them to kind of react off of it and raise your voice to get over it and do things like that. But she was naturally just anyway.
I went down a little rabbit hole as we were talking. I'm on the Trill page of Memory Alpha, and they have the picture of the forehead prosthetic on her, and they're talking through how Paramount didn't want to make her look strange and didn't like the early test, so they only did one scene of her filmed that way, and then of course they did the spots on just the side without doing them all the way down. But they've got pictures of all that on the Trill page of Memory Alpha if you're curious to see what those are. And apparently it was part of the Deep Space Nine magazine issue 1. They talked about it a lot. Interesting.
This might be a good time to transition back to my second note, which was obviously.
Sorry, Terry. Apologies. Terry Farrell also said it may not have taken so long to do the spots, except her and Michael Westmore had so much fun chatting every day. Oh. So maybe that's part of why it stayed that way. They became good buddies and wanted to keep their time together. I don't know.
That's a better way of looking at it than I was for the moment.
He did say in an interview, it's a laborious job. There seemed to be no easy way to make a stencil. It just had to be done every day.
Okay, well there you go.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No,
Obviously.
No, wait. Let's just to stay on that. That is interesting because it would be a challenge just to be able to make it go along the face and wrap like this and keep it without having it stretch. And also being, I don't know.
And they had a lot of trouble figuring out how to draw them. It said that in the early seasons they used, they experimented with different art pens. They tried paint, and like a lot of them would wash off under the hot lights. And so they had a hard time finding something that would work on. But once they got down to a science, it took them about an hour every day to draw the spots.
That's not horrible. Mm-hmm. So it feels like there should be some guide because the level of detail they're describing would be like you're expecting fans to have that technology. There's like freezing frames and going like, wait a minute, okay, here she is here she's there. Is it like a little bit off to this? But, back to the...
Obviously.
Yeah. It wasn't... Which person was saying that? It was
Berman or Pillar. It was one of those two.
Yeah, I think it was Berman, and he's like, we obviously couldn't set it on a space station.
Yeah.
I mean, a spaceship.
Yeah, Starship. And I was like, wait, why? Why? I mean, I would have liked to have heard the conversation that led to them saying, well, we want to do this concurrently. But we can't do this because we have some guesses, and you probably have a better guess than
I would say the argument for against it was it would seem like it was just the same show.
Yeah.
So why have two shows?
Right.
However, when we're thinking of formula in those days, and we see NCIS Miami and NCIS New Orleans and NCIS Los Angeles or whatever, those are the same shows in different locations, right?
Yeah.
So couldn't you just use the same starships? Yeah. I think it's more remarkable in the 90s they said, hey, we can't just do another Starship. We need to do something different.
Yeah,
and then, with Voyager, obviously, when Next Gen off the air, they're like, well, DS9 had not caught on. DS9 is really just catching on 30 years later. It got 7 seasons somehow, thank God. Yeah. But it never really caught on, so they definitely were like, we got to move it back to a Starship because that's what people want. That's what Next Gen... Yeah. But then they, I guess, told themselves probably... well, we don't want to just remake the Next Gen. So what's our hook? What's the twist that's going to make Voyager different than Next Gen? Which I thought they had a decent premise, even if it was not as well realized as we might have liked.
Well, I guess we'll get to that eventually.
Yes, we will. Not that long from now, Keith. About a year. About a year from now.
Not that long.
We only got one more season of Next Gen.
Yeah.
And Voyager premieres pretty soon after.
No, well, I was about to say, but a year is forever. Been realizing like how fast like the last 6 months go.
Yeah.
Ben, I can't think about that right now.
My alternate episode was behind the scenes for Free Enterprise. Since that was also a special episode, we mentioned off mic before this. I'd love to see behind the scenes of that and them talking about how great they thought it was. And
didn't we watch that?
We did, yeah.
Okay.
But all the just bizarre sexist misogynist things they had in it.
Right. No, I mean, didn't we see like a behind the scenes clip from? I thought it was included in the movie.
Oh, maybe we did.
Like
in the ending credits.
Yeah, I know we saw at least a blooper reel, and I think
we
they were explaining some things too about how they.
I think there was something over the end credits.
I need more. I need more.
My alternate episode is Avery Brooks decided he didn't want to be a part of this. He wanted to make his own special documentary, and there's a whole one that's just him, and he made it all himself, and he hand drew the backgrounds, and he... Actually, I kept trying to find out why he was in this documentary, and every time you Googled Deep Space Nine documentary Avery Brooks, even with the specific title of this one, which is just behind the scenes, which is very non-original, you just keep getting articles about the new DS9 documentary, the What We Left Behind, and he did let them use some archival interviews from him, but refused to do any new interviews. But he did say he watched it and thought it was excellent. He was glad they made it. He just is a very private person, and he wasn't interested in sitting down with them.
Very interesting.
So I'm assuming that extended way back in '93, and I'm hoping that they said, well, you know what, this actor's good enough, even if he won't do the publicity. Yeah. We're lucky to have him as our captain, our commander, because he's not a captain, but he is essentially the captain.
That is just so intriguing.
I'm the captain now.
He's still my favorite captain.
And she said, as Star Trek lore says, brother, dear brother. Which, I know.
What was really interesting is switching back and forth between the clips and the interviews. The lighting, they really did not even try to get decent lighting on these interviews, did they?
Oh, no.
You'd think if you're making a documentary to go public, you'd at least light them. I think
I
got one more.
As I was saying as we were watching, it was just easier for me to do because I found myself wanting to ask questions that would slow down the watching,
Right.
even though you
Sure.
never wrote anyway. So it was like, easier to just
I got all the answers. Ask away.
and just maybe a couple of comments as I'm just going through in order. It really helped to see some of the clips for me, just to remind me of some of the things that have been going on. Like for Emissary, as we were saying, it just reminded me of why I liked that episode so much. It had a different feel than I would have expected going back to like the first episode compared to some of the later ones. It kind of held up, and I was like, that's strange.
Yeah.
That's because they didn't share any clips of the Prophet stuff. That's what wore on us. All those
you're right.
Prophet scenes in part 2 just really wore us down.
I kind of liked it. But,
Well, okay, wore 2 of us down.
yeah,
I didn't dislike it.
Right.
There was just too much.
Yeah.
I know.
And it was too obtuse to do that much of it.
We or at least I keep bringing it up, but I know it's because Jimmy has seen so much more of the series, and
Every episode.
Yeah, I know what it's like to kind of. I keep using the Buffy analogy. Season 1 Buffy.
Oh, it sucks.
Well, you said I know, but I know. But, it's mostly like in comparison to the things like, let's just get to this.
Yes.
I know this is going to happen. They're doing it. You know what I'm saying?
I've watched Buffy through twice. And yeah, if we were to do a Buffy Rewatch podcast, I'd probably be like, yeah, there's some good things about season 1. But overall, season 1 sucked. DS9, season 1, I will say, we talked about last week. It was better than I remembered it being overall. Still not anywhere near as good as the show's going to get.
Right. It's the effect of if you have to and you're forced to rewatch the entire first season of something with people who haven't seen it before or haven't seen it as much, you kind of see it through their eyes. It's like,
Well, I object to that if you have to, if you're forced to.
You know what I
But
mean.
that's because my completionist streak in me would not let me say, oh, I'm just going to skip the bad first season and watch the later. If I'm rewatching the show, I'm starting at the beginning. It does not matter if the beginning sucked.
Yeah.
I'm like that too usually, but sometimes. I mean, if I'm doing it for like a catch up, the new season's coming out, I might go like maybe a season or two back at the
Sure,
most.
sure. Or an episode or two back for my time at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it? I was wondering where Captive Pursuit ranked because that came up, and we didn't. It's like it didn't even like.
Which one was that?
That's the one where we saw the alien who's being hunted.
It's Hunter of Tusk. Tusk and Hunter of Tusk.
Coming through the wormhole, and he's asking for asylum essentially.
Oh, yeah.
Or
The
maybe
first-
not even asking for it. But just,
No, he didn't want asylum.
Yeah.
Because
I thought
that
one
was...
was low. I thought we didn't like that one.
Well,
I'm wrong.
my problem with that one is the same problem I'm having with Harry Potter right now, where they're like, the house elves want to be slaves. The Tusk wants to be hunted.
Yeah.
That seems really racist and out of touch. They couched it as culture and tradition, and you don't mess with the culture and tradition.
I remember that.
And that just rubs me the
Yeah.
heck of a wrong way.
I understand. It's
yeah.
as thought exercises go. It's a valid thing to try
That
to
part's
explore.
interesting.
But that's, I mean, in some cases, even useful to be able to try to this is how these people are thinking. How do we approach trying to convince them otherwise? Because
Stockholm Syndrome.
well, you made me think of the John Brown biography I narrated a while back. Not to plug myself or anything, but it's
Available on audible.com.
it actually is.
I assumed.
What's the name of it?
The biography of John Brown. It was a W.E.B. Du Bois version of it.
Oh, okay.
And then you can just click on Keith Jackson's name and see all the other audiobooks he's not narrated, I assume.
Indeed.
Captive Pursuit was third from the bottom, by the way.
There were some problematic things he said toward the end. He was kind of going in sort of editorial thing. I had to think about exactly what that was. The point being, or the reason why I'm connecting that, is he's taking you through what it was like then for people living in the South and their justifications for things, which were just, I can't use the word, just insane.
Yeah.
The idea it was exactly
You can
like,
say conservative. You can say Republican.
No, Jimmy, it was the Democrats back then. That's who did.
Oh, that too.
So
Oh,
you know.
God.
That's another. Oh my God.
Oh, God.
I would. That's another tangent right there. Which is that's almost like a Star Wars thing. That
Yeah.
get to that. As I was saying, so it was almost exactly like watching an episode of Star Trek, especially for like the trial scenes and so forth, and the way that they're explaining. Just even the mere suggestion that you're saying that this is wrong is a crime. This is literally a crime they have in the books. We could prosecute you for that.
Yeah.
How do you explain to people how just lost in the weeds they are when they have things like this? Oh, this is tradition. This is wholesome family fun. Anyway.
It just seems to me like you don't really love our country. That's what I'm getting from this.
Well, a lot of people think that he probably shouldn't, and
That's fair too.
I think you have. I think they do
Yeah, I
have some
think
points.
you do.
I have a hard time loving this country.
I think I love it more than I should sometimes. But so Captain Pursuit. Getting all the way back to that, I brought that because just that little clip made me go, I kind of liked some of that, what they were showing with the performances, and I wondered why it never even came up during our summary. Like I didn't remember even whether it was season 1 wrap up where you go, oh, this is where all these things are ranked. Just completely forgot about that.
We didn't talk about the bottom that much, yeah.
Until just then, I was like, oh, that was an episode that existed. We watched that.
I think we just said, Move Along Home's the bottom, and moved on from there. And Q-List was second from the bottom.
Ooh.
Captain Pursuit was third. Emissary ended up being third from the top, because we put In the Hands of the Prophets as second, and Duet as number 1.
Yeah.
Man, that was good. Duet.
Good job using a clip from Duet. I would have been a little annoyed if they had it.
Yeah.
And just even didn't give away the part of the twist in a way, because we see that he's.
We don't see
that
that he's we don't see who he's claiming to be.
Yeah.
So you could see that he's just defending.
I went on that journey too. Oh yeah, I forgot about this twist and this twist. And
There were so many
I loved
twists.
so much. It was really great.
Love that.
The double blind twist, or whatever.
So,
Just really solid.
Yeah.
since you brought that up too, I didn't write that one in, but just even Move Along Home, I have some fond memories of it. Altogether, yes, I can see why that's just it's hit the bottom.
Me too. When I turned off Paramount Plus,
that was pretty fun. That was a fun memory. I'm pretty sure Avery Brooks is on the record as saying he regrets doing that episode, and that's the only one he regrets doing.
Did he really?
I'm pretty sure.
Well, because of him having to do that little song, the dance.
So I've been listening to Carrick Lofton and Aaron Eisenberg's podcast alongside ours, where they're talking about their memories, Jake and Nog, and I'm pretty sure they mentioned in the episode I was listening to that Avery Brooks said, "Yeah, that episode. That's the one thing I regret doing in my career."
For the Quark scenes and the gambling aspects of it, seeing him sort of elevated to almost the protagonist of the episode to try to rescue everyone, I really appreciated that. This is the thing I'm good at, and just that kind of taking you through the gambling process and the philosophies of it. Reminds me of an anime that I keep recommending to Steven, Kakegurui, amazing. Yeah, Komini. I was, I guess, surprised to learn that he actually was Irish. I don't know why I didn't know that, but just hearing him speaking his actual, voice.
Have you not seen him in other things?
I don't think so.
That's
I don't recall.
He was born in Dublin, Ireland.
Yeah, the Sunny episodes he's in are from the last season.
This is a
recent season.
Slight tangent, but you need to watch Hell on Wheels, which stars him and the current Captain Pike, Anson Mount.
Just a quick little, Keiko thing when they were quoting her, it didn't sound like she was saying ships going to explore. Yeah, so she was like on a rant, yeah. Armin Shimmerman again, just the compliment of how well he was doing. Just he's very personable, but also when they showed the clip of
the Last Outpost.
Yeah, Last Outpost, you could see just how he was informing how the Ferengi were going to be or should have been. The more subtle. The more subtle take of the three, usually, it wasn't something was supposed to be all simian or anything. It was just a, sort of menacingly opportunistic. Let's see. What else?
I will say on Reddit, there's a clip they linked to of Avery Brooks basically saying that Move Along Home was the peak of his time on DS9. He's laughing while he says it, and he's got Jake and Dax on either side of him at a table. The caption below it is, the way to get Avery Brooks to talk about Star Trek is surround them with his former castmates, because otherwise he never wants to talk about it.
I'm sure. I think...
God, we need the Sisko to come back in the new stuff. Dying for a Sisko series, or Kira, or both.
Yeah. I think
both would be my preference.
I wasn't the only one who reacted when Nana Visitor referred to her character as a terrorist, multiple times.
She was a terrorist.
I mean,
freedom fighter is a kinder way to put it, but freedom fighters are terrorists.
Yeah. It implies a certain perspective on things.
Now who hates America?
I mean, I'm for the freedom fighter terrorists.
Is a terrorist now?
Yeah. Actually, all our founding fathers were terrorists. depending on your perspective.
Yeah, or sometimes
It is a matter of perspective. Yes! I liked what she said, Bajorn women were like Celtic women.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a second, actually. But just the terrorist thing. So, have we heard the atrocities? Did they elaborate on that? She referred to some of the things that she had done.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure there were references in season 1 that she bombed some things. There was some collateral damage. People died that were innocents. Gotcha. But that was part of the fight.
Right. But yet, that something about the way that she was phrasing things made me uncomfortable. I think a lot of it is modern sensibilities of, for example, just using female as a noun. Just feels a little, people complain about that quite a bit. As well they should. There's something about, that's something very incel about the way that comes out. And so we have her just, Bajorn females are like this, and it's, they're different. They're like men, almost, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's
a very backwards view on gender types. Yeah.
Like if she said they were renegades, I think we wouldn't look at as bad as terrorists.
And to be clear, I'm not judging Nana Visitor for the words she said there, because for the time, that was the frame of reference that would have made sense.
Yeah. And
but yes, I agree with you that that's not how we would frame it today. Yes. Justifiably so.
And it's as far as being prepared to do interviews on camera too. Even actors, if I were prompted to do something just off the cuff. Well, I mean, it's a little different in that I've had a lot of practice analyzing things like this and analyzing character for the purpose of discussing it in this way. But if you just hand a random actor, here's this. What do you think about this? What do you think your character is? And they might be a little reductive in the moment. It's like, oh, it's just this.
Yeah.
So
that's probably how it was described to her over and over again, right? By the production.
Yeah. Yes.
Also, we know white people aren't terrorists, so.
But she's a Bajorn.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, white Bajorns aren't terrorists? Because there are black Bajorns, too.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've seen any yet, but I'm sure we see some through the course of the series.
It's planet-wide.
I mean, I guess my argument there is terrorist describes what you're doing. You're doing an act of terror to enact political change. Right. And that's like dictionary definition. So I don't think that makes her technically, yes, it makes her criminal because you break crimes to do terrorism. Right. I don't think that makes her a bad guy or on the wrong side of the conflict. In this case, the terrorists were the right side of the conflict.
Well, all right. So something you said there just made something click as far as how you would define a terrorist. I would think the difference would be whatever line you happen to cross. I think certainly you need to do like demonstrations, or the point of that is to create some sort of inconvenience or some sort of display to bring attention to something. The nature of terrorism is supposed to be to create, oh my God, we don't know what they're going to do next, we have to submit, because there are smaller forces that have to resort to those kinds of we could create this kind of destruction on this scale because we don't care anymore about the consequences of this.
And I think that's where the Bajorns got to.
Yeah.
After 50 years of occupation.
Yeah.
I agree with, if we talk about like the civil rights fight, I'm not saying, certainly most civil rights protesters were not terrorists. But one could argue that those that were terrorists were justified in doing so because conditions were so bad to a certain extent that you have to do something to stand up, which is not to say I'm going to go bomb the White House or anything. Right. Obviously not, even when Trump was in it.
What's the John Lewis thing? Make some good trouble?
Yes,
is that his thing?
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, in the Bajorn context, they've been oppressed for so long. You could say, slaves that revolted back during pre-Civil War times were terrorists that were causing big things. And yes, but they were in the right. And that's what the comparison I'm making. And I know my opinion on race relations doesn't matter. It shouldn't, but I'm just trying to explain my context of thinking.
Right.
No, everyone's opinion matters to a point. no, I mean that's
the wrong one.
Right. No, I mean in the sense that it's important to understand what everyone thinks and feels about that, so you can get to a. How else are you going to make that kind of change if you don't understand what everyone's saying? What do you do when you have a system that is locked up like that? So you have this entire territory where these things are technically legal. This is the legal definition of right, what is right and wrong and moral and Christian and godly and everything. So you don't really have much recourse at that point. Like any little thing you do is going to be this much of an act. So you kind of have to destroy the entire system to even make anything change. So going back to what was the graphics guy? What was his name again?
Oh, Okuda?
Yes.
Michael Okuda.
Yeah. Yeah, very
The
personal.
outrageous Okuda.
But it's
I don't think he was with the show then.
Yeah.
He came on early in Next Gen, but
Yeah.
maybe not that early.
so his it was infectious with his excited tone, but also it informed like how new that technology would have been then. The way he was putting it, like, this is going to save us so much time over this.
I was gonna say that his computer graphics look terrible.
I wouldn't say terrible.
They looked for the time they were not. They were cutting edge, but they looked so terrible. I say that as we watched this on a VHS tape on a 4K television, which I was surprised it didn't look as bad as I thought it would.
Right.
I was really expecting it to look
Yeah.
bad. There must be
Yeah.
some type of smart upgradey.
Eh.
I mean, it looked great,
Yeah,
but
right,
there must
right,
be
right.
something that made it look a little bit less terrible.
Well, sometimes they have upscaling.
Yeah,
This
it
is
must.
automatic
It
through the
must be.
thing. I was gonna say, I don't know. I guess I have low standards for a lot of things, as far as especially computer graphics from the 80s and 90s, because I know there's bad and there's bad, and there's bad claymation. There's things. As long as it doesn't take me out of it, I'm fine. Going back to watch some of the things I watched as a kid, I was like, how did I not see this? Why wasn't I like, that was fine.
That's what. Back in the day, we were so good at suspending our disbelief.
Yeah.
That was the thing.
It was.
They're so much better
To
at
Keith's
it.
point about bad versus bad, like, these graphics looked, like you said, great for the time. I think the frustration to me is the limitations of what they could and couldn't do. And obviously they've gotten much better now. And about halfway through DS9, they started really using CGI and computer generated, whereas this was just a computer generated small image that's just going to move back and forth, essentially.
Right.
They start using CGI created ships and stuff in the later seasons.
All right. Well, I mean, specifically what they were showing. He was showing an example of Quark looking at something and scanning.
Scanning the station, yeah.
It didn't seem. I mean, it looked realistic to me in the sense the computer would just have a wireframe that looked just like that, and it's kind of going through. I mean, I'm not sure what else it would have to look like, but
The wireframe, I would have imagined, would have been a lot more detailed.
for the future, perhaps.
I mean, for now, but from the 90s, you're right.
Yes.
You're
Well, I mean, for a portrayal of what they could do in the future from this perspective.
Quark just didn't zoom in. If he zoomed in, there would have been super detailed.
Like if you look at like Google Maps or something, you can still it's like,
Yeah.
but that's real life they're showing. Anyway, toward the wrap up of the special, I can't remember whether it was Zimmerman or was it might have been Berman saying that he thought Gene Roddenberry would have been proud of what they were doing. You know, he goes to bed thinking blah blah blah.
Yeah.
First of all, was Roddenberry still alive at that point?
No.
Oh, he wasn't.
He died before DS9 premiered.
Yeah.
He did reportedly, and here he knows, he did reportedly start to help with the development of DS9 before he died. But he
Okay.
died like a full year or two before DS9 went on the air.
So my question is, do you think he would have been proud of it? Do you think this is what he would have wanted?
No. But that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's what. Yeah, that's why I asked. That's the thought that occurred to me.
I
Like,
think
feel like-
1964 Gene Roddenberry would have been. I think 1992 Gene Roddenberry would not have been.
You're right. I think as he got older, he got
1964 Gene
more...
Roddenberry would have been like, oh man, that's cool.
Yeah, take the
How do we
chances.
sell that? Yeah.
He talked about how the Starfleet officers don't conflict with each other.
Yeah.
This was the perfect solution to that.
Yeah.
Put them with non-Starfleet officers, then you can conflict.
Right.
But because this show is so much about war and stuff, and by the time Next Gen was on the air, his vision of the future was so utopian.
Yeah.
Huh.
I agree. It would another reason DS9 more aligns with the 60 series than Next Gen in my mind.
That's true. That's true. That's a good point. I also find it weird that he thinks about Gene Roddenberry as he gets into bed every night.
Keep in mind, this was only a year or two after his death, and they were trying to create that continuity.
That's true.
Rick
That's
Berman was trying to be like,
Yeah.
I'm in charge now, but
Yeah.
this is still Gene.
Respect. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Interesting.
He would have had a revolt of fans if he had not done that.
Yeah. You're right.
If he was like, Gene's dead, so now I can do whatever I want with the
who cares?
franchise,
Yeah.
fans would be angry.
Do you think? I mean, so that's. Do you think that he actually believed that, or was this like lip service? It's like, think of people do. For Gene, I'm doing this, but he was like.
That's a question to who the type of person Rick Berman is. And I have read enough conflicting things, I really have no idea. A lot of people think he was very cynical and was very... he was a producer. He was a network guy.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think he was still just the say whatever people wanted to hear and do things for the money and not for the joy of the creativity. Because the fact that he involved himself so much in the creatives and he didn't come from a creative background was kind of odd. But at the same time, he was the heir to Gene's throne. And so...
Yeah.
but then other people have said he was authentic. I will say Rick Berman has not been involved in any of the new Trek stuff, and will probably never be involved in any of the new Trek stuff, even though he's still alive. There seems to be a strong bias against him from the people in charge now. A lot of people blame him for running Star Trek into the ground through the Voyager and Enterprise eras.
Okay.
All right, so that's even more interesting because I didn't realize that. So
I would love a sit-down interview, not with me, obviously. Shatner. Put Shatner and Berman in a room and let Shatner talk to Berman about his legacy for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
That would be fascinating and amazing. And we'd probably get some actual answers out of it.
Yeah. Obviously.
Do it now before Shatner dies. We've got days left, probably.
Yeah.
He's going to be like Carter. He'll make it to 98.
His 92nd birthday's coming up.
So I think appropriately getting to the wrap up, which is what I was.
Yeah, we need. We're way long.
Yeah, just the fun of her just doing that amusement park ride, MST3K wipe at the end. Where it's like, hope you have a safe journey back. Thank you for if you're on those Kings Island rides or something where you're on the shuttle and
it felt like amusement park.
Yeah, I did.
They kind of bounced all over the place as far as
I didn't get nauseous.
as far as the tone of what they were doing.
Yeah.
It almost seems like they were taking a clip from one of those. Here's a Universal, Paramount ride.
Yep.
I still enjoyed it. Again, as Stephen was saying, for the tongue-in-cheekness of it, if you looked in that sense.
Yeah.
And I wish I had taken some notes of the actual lines she was saying, so I could do like the version of like the, hey, can you?
You could almost look at it as a parody.
Mm-hmm.
But,
we're not ranking this anywhere, but if we did, it would be at the bottom. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The quiz thing reminded me too. It was kind of fun that she was including some of those questions. Some you could actually probably use for some actual trivia night somewhere.
How many docking?
Yeah, I would have no
ports.
idea.
Yeah.
I said at least 9. There were 18.
I said 89.
No, because I knew there was
94.
I knew there was one each at the top and bottom of the pylons. I didn't realize there were 12 around the ring.
Yeah.
Because we knew there was one right in the middle of each pylon, but there.
I didn't. Yeah, I mean.
But apparently there's 3 in between each sets of pylon too.
This is what impresses me is your retention of those kinds of things. I look at those schematics and I just keep kind of glazing over. I don't think of pylons or...
So to me, there are 2 iconic images of DS9 from the exterior. There's the Enterprise D docked at it, as we saw in the pilot, and the actual Playmates plastic one came with the Enterprise D docked. So then there's docking at the top of the pylon, which makes sense there would be at the bottom. And then in later seasons, when they have a starship stationed there all the time, it goes right in the middle of one of the pylons. So I'm like, well, there's at least a middle all the way around. And we've already seen clips in season 1 of somebody docking in the middle. Yeah. So that's, to me, is where the 9 is. It's not me being highly detailed. It's 2 images sticking in my head that I extrapolate from.
Which is still, to me, it's like for me to have that, I would have to really just have it in front of me and think about it if I were going to reverse engineer how this works. Then I could process it. If not, it just keeps looking like a picture and I don't even like...
Once she said 18, I am picturing... I've got several models of Deep Space Nine. I am picturing how there are like 3 little divots between each pylon on the ring. And I'm like, oh, those are the docking ports. I get it now.
Amazing.
Are we doing shady and annoying and all that?
I wasn't going to, but if you want to, feel free. Drink with Terry Farrell.
I started there, obviously. But I ended up going with Joe Longo, who had the line, who was the props guy, who said... People ask me what a tricorder does. Whatever Gene Roddenberry tells me.
That was great. I mean, Mike Okuda's another good...
because we've talked about that before many times. Like, these tricorders, that's like magic. Yeah. What is the deal with them? What can they...
That is an excellent choice. I'd say him, Mike Okuda, and Terry Farrell are all 3 legit drink choices.
I was actually thinking like Armin Shimmerman.
Fair.
That's a good choice, too.
Fair.
Shady was Paramount for
trying to sell this. My Shady's Avery Brooks for not participating. Now I love Avery Brooks too much. I'll go with Paramount.
My alternate, because I couldn't decide on Shady and Annoying, for Shady was, I don't remember what his job was. He might have been a graphics guy. Was Donnie Blakey's mustache. That was super shady. It was odd.
I can't call Avery Brooks annoying as much as I want to for not participating. So I think my annoyance is Renee Auberjonois for just the all over the placeness.
my annoyance was either the interstitial writers, who are the people writing what Terry Farrell was saying.
Oh yeah,
Leave me.
Good choice.
I know what you're going to say next. Right.
Or the people who wrote the score, especially the closing credits score. Oh my god!
Yeah, that was one they I think it was the same as the opening. It was they kind of interspersed it. again, it's funny trying to.
Like, why not just play DS9? The theme.
Oh yeah.
They did at the beginning.
They did. Yeah.
Maybe. Well, I guess they would. They would have the rights. I would imagine.
Yeah.
They played at the beginning, so they definitely had the rights.
Yeah.
They did not have the rights to Avery Brooks or the theme song. It would have been really funny if they had a scene that had Avery Brooks in it. There was just like a black bar over his whole body.
Wow. Yeah.
And then his voice was so good. Voice.
The voice changer thing.
Yeah.
The coder.
I love it.
Yeah, the music score. Trying to put myself back in my mindset again of the time where those things didn't really jump out and he's being weird and cheesy. It was sort of like, it was just kind of the way things were.
It's like the Seinfeld thing. And when I think back, I'm like, every stupid comedy special thought this is what comedy clubs, the music, and maybe it is what they did. Yeah. But it was ridiculous.
Oh, are you talking about the bumpers where he's doing the bit, or are you talking about the music?
The music, yeah.
Yep.
Especially that part. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we are going to take our normal season hiatus. It will not be double long, even though we essentially did 2 seasons work here, because we are dedicated to the task and we're that kind of professional. But we do have 3 bonus episodes coming to you over the 6 weeks, as become usual. Last few. Each of us have picked one, and then we'll be back with Next Gen's final season and DS9 Season 2. Until then, live long.
Obviously. And prosper.
If I had anything that's blown right out of my head, I can't get there now. It's just,
I had all my stuff picked like within the first 10 minutes of the show. It's like, yep, yes. And then I changed all half of them too.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?